For over 1,000 years, Western civilization has been stuck in a dark age of sexual repression and misinformation. We get an oversexed overload from the media, but nothing in the way of honest, helpful, practical information on sex and how to do it right. That sucks, and I'm fucking sick of it. My name's JV Altheras, and I've spent a couple decades learning everything I can about how to have amazing sex and more of it. Not in a classroom like a lot of people who talk about sex. I learned it all in the gutter, right where Mom told me I'd end up. It's my mission to bring an end to the sexual dark age with brutally honest talk and education on all aspects of sex and sexuality, in an atmosphere that will keep you entertained without treating you like an idiot. Shara and I are not doctors. Certifiable, perhaps, but not certified in any way. And that means we don't have to talk about vaginas and penises to maintain academic credibility. You got a problem with a vagina? Call a gynecologist. You want to learn more about pussies and cocks and how to make them happy? You've come to the right place. Greetings and welcome to episode 79. Why are you already rolling your eyes at me? What did I do?
I didn't say you did anything.
You didn't say anything at all, but you didn't have to.
I smell trouble, that's all I'm saying.
Well, I always smell like trouble. That's not news.
There's trouble with a T, and then there's trouble with a capital T. I see the capital T in front of me right now.
Well, alrighty then.
Am I wrong?
I don't know. I feel discriminated against.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You don't sound sorry.
Oh, I am.
And now the audience knows you're a terrible liar. We've talked about it. But I don't think you've ever proven it to the internet before.
I can't lie. It's terrible. If somebody said, "Would you like to fuck me?" and I didn't want to fuck them, I couldn't lie about it. I'd have to say, "No, thank you."
Well, no thank you is an acceptable response.
I know.
In fact, I was just, when I was doing the draft of the welcome packet for the takeover.
Desire trip?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was one of the topics. You'll probably get invited to do things you may not be interested in doing. A polite no is always acceptable.
I'm too scared.
Well, John and Karen's policy about swinging. Every once in a while, you meet a couple that you really like, but if you ever played together, they'd be bored and you'd be terrified. Or somebody'd be bored and somebody'd be terrified. True story, though. Mm-hmm. That is a true story.
It is.
All right, so tonight we have a listener mail topic, and it is an interesting collection of BDSM questions from Down Under. Our audience spans the globe, which is really cool. At this point, we have managed to penetrate even...
Penetrate, ooh.
Yes, bastions of tyranny. We're not unpopular in Iran. But most of our downloads, as one would expect for an English-language podcast, come from the primarily English-speaking world. The U.S., Canada, Great Britain, and Australia are our biggest spots. But we don't get that much listener mail from Australia, so this is kind of cool. But anyway, it is an interesting duo trio, several interesting BDSM questions that are an entire episode's worth. Shower, you need to talk more.
Well, I thought you were going to read it, but I want to say a couple of quick things. Where is our highest listener audience from? What state?
Oh, it's still Washington, D.C.
See, right now, they don't
by state, California. By metropolitan area or media market, Washington, D.C. by far.
Where all the politicians are.
That's right.
Of course, they're probably just a little too busy right now to listen to episodes of anything.
If we can do anything to inspire lawmakers or people who are around the lawmakers to open their minds, then I believe we are performing a public service. And even if we're just horrifying them, we're still performing a public service.
It was interesting. Before we get into this, I was watching an interview the other day on Pamela Anderson and a rabbi that were talking.
Sounds like the beginning of a bad joke.
It's not, though. They were both on talking about how pornography is bad for people. And I just wanted to laugh because they said that it ruins marriages and relationships. And like, instead of spending time with your wife or significant other that's in the other room, he's downstairs looking at porn. Or in my case, she's downstairs looking at porn. But it's that that means that there was an issue in the relationship, because the pornography should not take away from someone's relationship unless you're letting it take away from the relationship.
Yeah, we are. That's a good idea for a topic in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna have some access to some interesting interview guests, but there is plenty of time to talk about porn.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I just wanted to bring it up because it was an interesting interview.
Well, we should talk about it on our next episode then.
Okay.
All right. So, our lady listener from Australia writes, "You've gained a new follower from sunny Australia. So I had a couple of questions that I was hoping you might be able to address on an upcoming episode. For context, I'm a pretty inexperienced sub who's played with a few doms quite casually but not really found anyone who I feel comfortable fully submitting to. I've joined FetLife as well as knowing a small handful of people in the real world who are into various aspects of BDSM, but I still feel a little like Bambi on ice or a lamb to the slaughter, whichever metaphor you want to run with. So my first question is, do you have any tips on how to find a good dom? For example, things to look for and any warning signs that someone might not be right. Since joining FetLife, quite a few doms have approached me, but mostly they're quite pushy and it feels like my vulnerability and inexperience is what they're mainly into. While as a sub I'm all for being vulnerable, I also want to be safe and choose someone worthy of my submission without meaning to sound arrogant. My second question is about dealing with triggers from past trauma, and also how my dom would have to navigate that space. I was in an emotionally, physically, and sexually abusive relationship for 5 years. He was my first and only boyfriend, and I haven't felt comfortable with anything other than quite casual encounters since. But that will pass with time. However, as a result, I have PTSD, and stuff that I'm interested in exploring sexually were things that were also used abusively or negatively, such as choking. I know there's a distinct difference between BDSM and abuse, but I feel like from a dom's perspective, I'm going to be too hard or annoying. For the record, I've seen a therapist, I'm totally functional, and largely have a handle on triggers, and my official diagnosis is that I'm well on the way to recovery. But my concern arose as a result of a platonic conversation with a dom recently, where he said he wouldn't be able to enjoy himself with a submissive who had been abused because he would be worried about breaking them. So I guess my very convoluted question, or perhaps talking point, is around navigating triggers, shifting versus hard limits, and whether this is a sentiment common among doms or whether that guy was just a douche. For the record, I've previously been upfront with my history because I feel like it's a safety concern for me and a play partner, but his response has made me hesitant. Am I oversharing or being safety conscious?
Well, first, I don't think that she's oversharing. I think it's imperative that she does share it. However, she should find out if she really likes the dominant first before she necessarily has, you don't have to necessarily go into all of that right away. And I don't know how long she was talking to that one, but.
Well, and I think there's enough going on here. We should probably just go through it front to back.
Okay.
So I'll start with your front and end up in your rear.
So the
first. And that's it. Thank you, sweetie. That's Shara's first blush of the episode. So the first question really is tips on finding a good dom and sentiments surrounding that.
And I just want to share that when I first went on FetLife can kind of almost be like the old chat rooms on AOL, if everybody remembers those, and you just have these people that are going through there and stalker type material. So you kind of can have that on FetLife as well. As soon as they see somebody signing up a new profile, you get a lot of the wannabes, I'll call them, that are searching for you and trying to reach out to you and wanting to spend time with you. Take your time, do your research, don't rush, and if they are really worthy, they have a good standing in the community. The good standing ones in the community, the ones who have a good standing in the community, are easy to verify.
Right. Well, and it depends too, what she doesn't mention whether she's in an urban area or what.
Right.
But, it depends on what you have for community, because a lot of times new people don't have, they don't have any community or really any sense of it.
So that's where you start looking for a munch, depending on how far she'd have to drive to see if there's something local. And they list the munches on FetLife by, I believe by state. Correct?
It's by urban area, but it's geographical. So it's a geographical breakdown that gets fairly specific.
I thought so.
So you can do state or county or whatever. But as far as
important thing to remember is that kinky people are a cross section of people, just like everyone else. We tend to feel an affinity with other kinky people because we have shared interests. Mm-hmm. We have often a shared sense of being kind of left out in the cold by the sexual revolution, mm-hmm. and a lot of other things. So it's easy to feel fellowship with people before you really know them very well. Right. And it is important to remember that, especially on the internet, I think I am realistic in saying half of all the people on the internet are entirely full of shit. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of good people out there, and often when you are online, people whose profiles have been posted for a long time, who demonstrate a lot of connections with other people socially, whether it's FetLife or even on alt.com, mm-hmm. Even on the dating sites, usually you have links between people. So, people who seem to be part of a community, even if it's online, generally are a little bit more established.
And that's where, if you're going to some munches, you get to know other people in the lifestyle, and they know people, so they kind of know who you can trust and who you can't. You get a feel. Most people have a good gut feeling about it. Like, I had a friend that told me about this dominant, and said, go check him out on alt.com, and it was you. And look at, we're still together. So, I mean, she knew you, so there's a difference. But that's what I'm saying, is that somebody that, and she wasn't even really somebody that was in the lifestyle like you and I are.
No.
She just knew that I was and that you were. And she said, go check him out, and I'm going to tell him about you. And so somebody might not necessarily be in the lifestyle and I don't know how open she is about it with that, but some of your close friends, if you tell them that you're in the lifestyle, they might know somebody that also is, that would be a good match.
Oh yeah. And when I'm trying to think right now about, how to size up a dominant fairly quickly or early on. I am aware and have in the past been privy to the barrage of private messages that female submissives typically get whenever they step out online anywhere. Then, the first challenge is to sort through them. A couple of fairly easily sorting criteria are that a lot of these bullshit messages are messages from wannabes or people who are just bossy and think a submissive is going to be an easy doormat. There are a lot of people with many different types of misunderstandings about what this lifestyle is about. Mm-hmm. So people who are not informed can often try to portray what they believe is expected without having any understanding of the underlying psychology and respect that is involved in kinky play. But so I would say straight off, anyone who expects submission from you before they have earned your respect, you can just get rid of instantly.
Right.
Anyone who expects to be able to give you commands or instructions, in a first or second email, those are the kinds of mentalities that are generally worn by bad dominance.
Exactly. And that's, a good dominant would ask you questions about your likes and dislikes, and you might not know yet if you're new into the lifestyle, but I used to have some that would write me and say, okay, so I want you to finger yourself tonight at 10 o'clock. I'm like, okay, well, so first of all, how would you know that I am? And if I was a really good submissive to my dominant, I would do what my dominant tells me to do. However, you're not my dominant. You're just a wannabe. And so I'm not going to do anything like that. So it's like, well, and then as you know, and we've shared this, I think, with the audience, that I had someone that mentored me and did not know a whole lot about him when he started mentoring me. And when we went to a few events, people would say, would try to pull me away from him, like get away from him. And then when I found you and said I was going to get together with you, he wasn't happy about it. I mean, he was like, no. Mm-mm. And I said, oh, yes. I said, I'm going. And what I mean by that part's important, because sometimes a dominant will just say that they're going to mentor you.
Right.
And even mentoring you, you want to be in good hands.
Yeah, you are still giving up in a mentoring arrangement. You are still giving up where you're giving your submission, you know, in whatever specific terms are negotiated, but you're still giving something that is valuable, and you are entitled to valuable compensation in return, basically.
And I was very new to it, so I was suckered in.
Right.
The good news is I've learned enough about it that I could talk about it on the show, on the podcast, because I've learned what not to do. And I should never have been mentored by him because he was not really the right person to mentor me.
Right.
He was
But in a classic example, you didn't know any better at the time. So it's a situation you landed in.
Right. I was extremely attracted to him. He, very tall, deep voice, handsome. And so I was attracted to him. And, you know, it was
tall with a deep voice, so you have a type.
Touche. And he was not really well known in the community. So I started bringing him to events that I was used to going to with other people. And that's when they were trying to pull me away from him because they felt he was definitely not the right person for me to be mentored by.
Yeah.
Another thing is if you find a nice female, if you're a female and you find a nice female that might mentor you, I found that to be very helpful. I received a lot of great advice from switches, from female dominants, from other submissives. What are you laughing about?
I'm not laughing. I'm just smiling. I find it very helpful when female dominants mentor you as well. It's very helpful to my frame of mind, to my scenery.
Yes. I don't want to say her name, but you know her well. And when she wasn't really mentoring me, but she was helpful in a lot of advice. But the tiny little one with the long flogger that was longer than her, you enjoyed watching her flog me.
That was a show on its own. That damn flogger was almost as big as she was.
I know. And I think at the time I was like a size 2 and she was probably a size 2 as well. So to have two, it was like the flogger, we could have held it across both of our arms or put the two of us like head to head.
Yeah, I didn't put together till later that I could have tied you both up with it.
Yeah.
She wasn't grooving on me like that, though.
No, well, she has a more. She's a dominant, so she's not into. I don't think she was being tied up because she liked hitting me with the hairbrush and hitting me with the flogger and things like that. So I believe that she was more dominant. So anyway, but she was very helpful. So one of the things that I would always recommend is getting to know other submissives or a female dominant. And I'm not saying that some female dominants don't manipulate. I'm just saying that I find a lot of them to not be out there trying to grab you on FetLife and things like that. It's
they expressly do not have the alpha male personality traits,
right?
That can be toxic if they are implemented poorly.
And I'm not saying that there's none out there, but I'd say rare.
Right. Well, one other sorting criteria that I should mention. I like sorting criteria. I've never really thought of it in that way before, but I think I'm going to hang on to that. Anyone who is overtly sexual in their first communication with you on the internet, whether it's kinky or vanilla dating, anyone who's overtly sexual in their first communication, you can probably just pitch.
Yes.
Because they have no class. And they have unreasonable expectations. So, right off the bat, they have unreasonable expectations. So as a dominant, when I am approaching a submissive who I may be playing with in any terms, it may be as a service top. I may just be providing some funsies and some lashes, or it might be sexy play or somebody we're actually playing with. But regardless, I try to approach it as an interview. And any responsible dominant is going to approach a first contact. They're not going to want to waste your time. They're not going to want to waste their own time. Mm-hmm. They're going to approach a first contact probably, fairly pragmatically. They should be cordial and polite, and most of all respectful to you. Mm-hmm. And they should be asking usually pretty practical questions. They should be interested in figuring out rather quickly whether or not your kinks line up with their kinks.
Right.
So it should be a cordial conversation. It shouldn't be unless there's some kind of really immediate chemistry. It should not be dirty talk. It should be hey, let's figure out if it's worth the two of us getting to know each other kind of a conversation.
And I think you can easily pick that up just in the first conversation or going back and forth in, emails or, sometimes I get this visual of a guy sitting at a computer and looking at the questionnaires that you fill out on, say, alt.com of what's your kink and what you're into, and like jacking off reading your list. So, and you can kind of pick those out by the reaching out to you and things like that, what they're like. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to run from this one as fast as I can. So, but I think that you're right. If you're paying attention, they should be inquisitive to what your likes and dislikes, and do they match up with you?
Well, what did Deadpool say? My crazy matches your crazy.
Definitely.
All right, so I think we have pretty thoroughly handled that portion of the question, or that question. So let's take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we'll be back right after this.
When we were researching budget bondage gear at a listener's request, we stumbled onto ExtremeRestraints.com and found the most impressive bondage gear site on the internet. And we don't say that lightly.
We bought a bunch of toys to try them out, and we're so impressed with the selection, quality, and service that we reached out to them about sponsoring the show.
From basic whips to top-notch floggers, from beginner cuffs to shackles and cages, from nipple clamps to fucking machines, from budget to bad fucking ass, ExtremeRestraints.com has put together an immense catalog of kinky gear that we honestly believe is second to none on the internet.
And not only do they offer a free gift and 99-cent toys for new customers, plain brown wrapper shipping, and free shipping on orders over $119, they'll give you 10% off if you enter the promo code ESDA at checkout.
And that's not 10% off on your first order. It's 10% off every order, forever, as long as you enter the code. Because they're awesome and they support this show. You can listen to episode 70 for more details, or just check out ExtremeRestraints.com, use the promo code ESDA, and get your kink on.
And we're back.
Welcome back.
Oh, so you almost went to a baritone there. Do that again. Give me some deep and sexy, baby.
I can't do that all the time.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Now I feel like I'm singing part of the Cotter.
Wow,
Welcome back, Cotter.
Look how self-conscious you are. You're all fidgety and giggly and shit.
Next question. Oh, my word.
I'm going to find out where that blush came from later. I'm not going to drag it out of you on the show this time. Although the last time I had to drag something out of you on the show, I got a lot of positive comments. There are a lot of people who are very entertained by your misery, young lady.
Okay, here's the deal. A long time ago, I worked in the medical field for a long time, as you know. And one of the doctors that I worked for wanted me to open up my own answering service.
Right.
He was going to put the money up in front for me and, get me started. And I thought about it long and hard, but I said, no, because I'd be working weekends and nights. And he said, but your voice, he said, and I listened to you. I worked, as you know, in a psychiatric field for a long time. And he said, you're so good with the patients. And he said, and your voice is so soothing. So when you say, I'm trying to give you a different voice there, that a deeper baritone, it brings back those memories of how he would always talk about my voice. And I used to get these Secret Santa cards, and every year. And it turned out it was him, and I didn't know it for a long time, and it turned out it was him. So, yeah.
Okay. So, well, thank you for sharing and not forcing me to come back to it later.
You're welcome.
One of these days, I keep dragging this shit out of you on the show, and it's never the good stuff. One of these days, it's got to be the good stuff. It's like something reasonable and normal and mundane.
Well, he wanted to fuck me. Does that make it better for you?
Baby, so many people have wanted to fuck you. Seriously, do you have any idea how many of your stories about people you used to know involve someone who either wanted to fuck you or someone you were fucking?
No. I didn't know that.
Percentages are high.
Well.
All right, so the second question was dealing with triggers from past trauma. So I have a lot of fairly complicated thoughts on this part. I don't know if you want to start, if you have anything that you
on the
want to
triggers?
begin with. Yeah, on dealing with the triggers and working with dominance regarding triggers.
Well, when she gets closer to being in an actual relationship with a dominant where they're going to begin to play, by that point, I'm sure she would have talked to him about her past experiences, and a good dominant will have an open communication with her to make sure. And obviously the safe word is also important, because if you're using the safe word, with her, to me, it'd be imperative for her to use a safe word when she's feeling like something's coming on that doesn't feel right. Something could trigger you so fast.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, I'm trying not to make this convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
It is a known possibility when you're doing kinky play, especially serious play,
Mm-hmm.
Edge play or anything heavy. It is an accepted possibility that there are times that a submissive can end up going to a bad place, but be unable to communicate verbally.
Right.
And it's not just if they're gagged, if they are, for whatever reason, you get into some deep emotional stuff and you can be frozen and just unable to find words. Mm-hmm. So, visual cues are very important.
Yes.
And as you have seen me do many, many times when I have flogged someone that I did not know well, very simple. You put your hand up. Mm-hmm. Any problem, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to worry about me hearing you. Visual cues also do not require people to be able to be heard. So, right. Background noise is not a factor. So they are more readily picked up on and tend to be less likely to be misunderstood. Mm-hmm. And it's also a common sign. You put your hand up, that's stop. Right. Or I need your attention. Talk to me. It's
well, I've used it with you a couple times because I'm into the choking with you choking me.
Yeah, you are.
Oh. Okay. So, I just wish I didn't blush. I just really wish I did not blush. Anyway, something new that we've kind of been playing with, and that's where you do some choking with me.
Yeah, we did end up talking about it pretty thoroughly a couple episodes ago.
Okay, so, but we've done a few more things with it since then, and it's still really hot for me, so.
That's my girl.
But there are times that I've had to put my hand up because I may not be able to I could probably talk, but I'm not sure. Sometimes the belt is a little bit tighter.
Right.
So when I put my hand up, you're always watching for that. So that's one thing that she wants to make sure of, is that the dominant is watching for that, because I barely even have my hand all the way up and you're stopping and saying, what do you need, Shara?
Right. And so safety stuff you always have to work out with someone. Mm-hmm. So there are things that tend to work for people, but it's all based on what the dominant is used to. They may have certain requests, and they may request something that makes total sense to you. So that we don't mean to imply any kind of a necessary structure to that type of stuff, as long as the safety is being addressed. And in the case of PTSD and triggers, the visual cues are absolutely mandatory. Right. In my opinion.
Yes, I agree.
So as far as the part about people with triggers being too difficult for a dominant.
Here's the fortunate thing for her. When she does find the right dominant, and I know she will, she's going to have one of the best dominants that there are, because he's going to be so in tune with what her needs are, and the right dominant will pay attention to what her needs are and isn't going to be afraid of PTSD, isn't going to say you're too much for me to handle. She's going to have one of the most experienced dominants there are.
Right, and not for nothing, there are plenty of dominants out there who, for whatever reason, would not be interested in that particular type of challenge, or would not be properly equipped to cope with that particular type of challenge. I mean, it takes a dominant who is very methodical and very patient. You know, and those two qualities we all hope dominants have to some extent, but they are present in different extents and to different extents in different people. So it's certainly not something I would shy away from. You know, it's really about being methodical and very specific. You have to spend the time to really understand the trigger and have a conversation about it.
Right.
You should have a conversation about it at a time that is not immediately adjacent to playtime, optimally. So that you can understand, so the dominant can understand, not only what you're aware of that may trigger it, but the dominant has to consider things that are adjacent to that. They may want 2 or 3 degrees of separation from whatever play, whatever type of play or scenarios trigger you. So there's going to need to be a lot of communication, but it is not intimidating to the right type of dominant. And finding the right dominant to play with is just like, trying to find the right romantic partner is always a challenge. So it may take some work, but the quicker, as you go about the process, you will be able to disqualify people more and more quickly. And that is not, I don't intend to mean that as a negative towards the people.
Right.
But, you will determine that they do not fit the right criteria to be your play partner.
Right.
And then you can move on. And as you go on, you'll be able to notice personality traits and stuff that don't jive with you. That don't jive with the way you like to play or the way you like to live your life. And, eventually you will find the right person to play with.
And that's where going to the munches and getting to know some people that she would get along with would be very helpful, because then she can go to events with them and enjoy being around the lifestyle and run into different people. And so I think that she would really enjoy that, being able to have other people to be with.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, some friends of ours who we are about to see in Cancun, we had some conversations. He has PTSD. That's combat stress, or that's from combat stress when he was in the Middle East. And he was wondering, after he learned, quite a lot about kink last year at Desire, he was wondering if impact play might actually be a benefit to him to help him release the pent-up aggression and feelings.
Right.
So, I will find out whether he ever did anything about that, or maybe he's interested in doing something about that at Desire this year, because we certainly have people who are happy to swing a flogger on a big strapping man. So, some of you might need phone books to stand on, but still, it's a good show regardless. But you can use, one of the things that you've probably talked about in therapy is desensitization. So you figure out what the trigger is, and you methodically inch a little bit closer to it and see if you can't wear down the panic response or the fear response.
Right.
And that is something any good qualified dominant can do if it's a part of the relationship that you have set up for yourselves.
And also, I would like to talk to our medical advisor. We're supposed to be having him on the show.
Yes.
So we're
going to have a real live medical advisor on the air with us.
I can't wait. And I think it would be good to ask him that question, if he's run into this at all with the PTSD and the lifestyle. Maybe he's had some experiences that he might be able to share, advice that he could give. So.
Yeah, and as to the last part of this, or kind of the last part, the dom that she was talking to, the platonic conversation where the guy said he wouldn't be able to enjoy himself with a submissive who had been abused because he would be worried about breaking them. There are just so many things that aggravate me about that.
I know.
So many things. This is the BDSM community, okay? We are the house of broken toys. Everybody's got pain. Everybody's got damage. The thing that I really love about our community is that we wear our damage. Mm-hmm. We're okay with it. We talk about it. We find community and we share and we help each other just by providing that sense of community.
Right.
So, no, I would never shy away from playing with someone because they were abused or being in a relationship with someone because they were abused.
Right.
Everyone has their damage. Mm-hmm. And so someone who has been abused in the past, when you're doing this kind of play, there are a particular set of things that you need to do to be responsible and to be able to play with that person in a good fashion, because no dominant wants a scene to go sideways. We don't want anyone we're playing with to ever have a trigger experience or go down the dark rabbit hole. So it's just a matter of being diligent and responsible, and that is not a common that is a common sentiment among losers, is what it is. And I try not to pick on people directly or pick on people or types of people on the show, but that's bullshit. Loser doms. You have anything to add, Shar?
No, I think you've covered.
I had a few things to say there.
I if we're done talking about this, I do want to
Yes.
make sure to add. I have covered just about all the questions that have been coming our way. We have a couple more lined up to discuss. But if somebody has something out there that hasn't been answered, please send it to us again so that I can stay on top of it. I would prefer it not go to FetLife, because I go on FetLife, but not as often as I go to our Ending the Sexual Dark Age page or our Gmail. So I would prefer, add me as a friend on FetLife if you want to. That's great. I don't, or JV or both of us. But in terms of sending a question, the best place to send it is to my Gmail or to the Ending Sexual Dark Age page so that I could get to it right away.
Definitely. And and one last item before we actually wrap it up, because we're actually the last couple of lines of the email, where she says, also for the record, I've previously been upfront with my history because I feel like it's a safety concern for me and a play partner. But his response has made me hesitant. Am I oversharing or being safety conscious? From what you have said, you are doing absolutely exactly all the right things. Mm-hmm. Being upfront and communicative and saying, in order to play with me, we have to worry about these things.
Right.
So a conscientious dominant, the kind of dominant that you want to play with, is going to be appreciative. A submissive who is able to articulate her desires and her kinks, and anything that a submissive is able to do to clearly articulate their play style, their preferences and needs, is immensely helpful to a dominant. Often with inexperienced play partners, they have not yet learned the vocabulary to communicate those things.
True.
And it's typically a luxury that you have when you're playing with experienced people that you do not expect in less experienced people. So carry on.
Yes. And just move on from him, and no big deal with him.
All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. Shar, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we bring the episode to a close?
Just looking forward to 2 weeks from yesterday.
Yeah, we're going to make a real effort this year when we are at the resort to have the recorder around more. Mm-hmm. And it's an embarrassment of riches this year. 112 couples. We have the entire resort. So we literally have the run of the place. But one of the big advantages to that is our group is larger than ever. It's not that we ever had any kind of friction with the other people who were there. It just wasn't all our group. And we have often in the past finished really interesting conversations because we have we go to paradise and we're surrounded by sexy naked people, but really the conversation is one of the highlights of the trip just about every time. So we have these amazing conversations on these convoluted, incredibly interesting topics, and so many times we have finished talking about something and said, I really wish we would have recorded that. Mm-hmm. So we're just going to try to have the recorder around more often because we have an unprecedented number of podcasters on this year's trip,
Yes.
So we have a lot of people who are of the type to just fire up a microphone and go for it.
Exactly.
So, we are planning some conversations ahead of time, and I think it's going to be a really amazing trip this year.
I do too. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, so hopefully we will have half a dozen episodes to release that were recorded on the trip. There will at least be the one live episode. Well, live, but recorded in front of a live audience is the way we should say it. So there'll be that episode for sure, and then one or two more. But yeah, I'm hoping for good times, and the dungeon party itself is probably going to be worth its own episode.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I can't wait. I just cannot wait.
All right, so I think that pretty much brings this one to a close, Princess, unless you've got anything else.
Nope, that's it for me.
All right, well, as always, everyone out there in internet land, thank you so much for being such a loyal audience. Our download numbers after coming back are truly heartwarming. So
Yes.
Thank you. We fucking love you. And we're thinking of, we're trying to think up new and interesting ways to entertain you and turn you on.
Well, my brain is always working that way. I can't help myself.
So feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Ending the Sexual Dark Age page. Feel free to send a message or find either one of us personally, JV Altharas or Sharabono. Email me at jvaltharas@gmail.com. That's ALTHARAS. Someone requested I do that because they had a wrong spelling and couldn't get a hold of me. And jvshara@gmail.com. And we would love to hear from you.
Yes, absolutely.
And until next time, this is JV and Shara reminding you that sex is one of the greatest things in life, but there is always room for better.
Always.